emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 526.HE1304, certificate number 39859. Carlo Gesualdo.
I think it's a soft G. Carlo Gesualdo.
Oh, Gesualdo.
Carlo Gesualdo.
Oh, Carlo Gesualdo.
Paesano mio. Il signor Gesualdo è molto perverso.
Che cazzo fai?
He's Italian.
Oh, really?
Let's just start off. Let's just get to the nitty gritty right away. He's Italian.
Lots of mozzarella.
If I were to ask you what you think of as old music, what's old music to you? Manic Street Preachers?
Oh, yeah, old music. Yeah, right. Seals and Crofts.
Do you feel like they invented the chromatic scale? And
yeah, Seals and Crofts for sure. They invented interracial marriage. They invented sitting on the porch of a cabin. Let me see. Old music, I would think of as the music of the spheres.
So the music of just God's creation of the universe.
Yeah, that's right. The music of the spheres, and then the Furies, the screeching of the Furies.
So of the two first musicians, one was very good and one was very bad. Or at least the second musician was punk.
Well, no.
The second band.
Don't we think of the Iliad as something that was probably sung rather than just like intoned or recited?
It would make it a lot better, right? You know, if you've ever had to read epic poetry in a college or high school class.
If it was rapped.
What if the teacher turns his chair around and sits on it backwards and says,
yo, 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 in the wine dark sea.
Gonna be real with you guys about the rosy colored dawn. We know the ancient Greeks and Romans had music. They had lyres.
Yeah.
I mean, Apollo created, maybe Hermes invented the lyre from a tortoise shell.
Sure. We still use those today.
To this day, we're still killing turtles to make
guitar picks now, but yeah.
Is that right? Are guitar picks real tortoise shell?
Not anymore.
Oh,
but
okay.
a lot of them are made to look like tortoise shell.
I mean, we killed a ton of elephants to get classical and romantic music, right? For piano keys.
I still have, my old piano had ivory keys.
This is why I don't listen to music.
This is why I can't tax the rich.
Because they'll stop killing elephants?
Because
wouldn't we hate that if the Trump kids were not shooting elephants anymore?
How are you going to make a piano that doesn't have real ivory keys? It's just going to be a plastic piece of garbage.
I have a question about that. You're a pianist of some experience. Can a good keyboard player tell the difference between an old-time... Like, did people complain when they couldn't use ivory keyboards anymore?
Well, ivory has a tactile quality that's different from plastic, but you can make piano keys.
They're pretty good, right?
Yeah, you can make them really nicely.
Like if you buy a $100,000 Steinway today, it's not going to have ivory they found in a basement, right? It's going to have some amazing space-age ivorite.
Almost certainly, although I have not bought a $100,000 Steinway lately. But yeah, the piano that I had it was, the whole key wasn't made of ivory. It was an ivory kind of layer.
My sister has my great-grandma's piano, and the ivory layer has kind of popped off a few of the keys. It's wood after about a millimeter of ivory.
Yeah, but it's beautiful and and feels wonderful under your fingers. But I don't think ivory is necessary. When they stopped making pianos out of ivory, it wasn't the death of music.
I was just wondering if, Stevie Wonder complained or something.
No, I doubt it. But wasn't the oldest music drums? Doesn't it have to have been drums? Weren't people making music from the very start?
We assume so. There's no record because just like today, drummers can't read or write.
Right, that's right. There's zero way to accurately transcribe drum music. Well, every drummer I know has a different notation that they invented themselves.
Oh, is that right?
When I teach songs to new drummers, the ones that do write something down, and a lot of them do,
they just have their own
private language that's kind of based on what drum notation
all drummers
is.
are just like raised by coyotes, and you pull them out of the New Mexico desert, and they all talk like Nell. They
have there are some standard forms,
and some of them can read and write English. Some,
not in my experience.
Not Ringo.
Maybe Matt Cameron can, but nobody operating at my level.
Neil Peart passed his A levels or whatever they have in Canada.
Oh no, former Long Winters drummer, or I guess present Long Winters drummer Nabil Ayers, he's been writing articles for the New York Times recently.
But he has to dictate them.
But you should see the pieces of paper where drummers will notate a song. It's the craziest looking stuff because they don't make notes. They just make booms and baps.
Well, I mean, musical notation kind of developed like that. The very first people to notate music did not have our staff notation is kind of something we honed in on over the centuries. But I don't think the oldest drums have survived because they were just pieces of leather stretched over something and they didn't last the winter.
Right. Turtle shells, probably.
Yeah, probably turtle shells. What else? What else does nature provide that you could, maybe it's just turtles.
I mean, you can bang two rocks together. Oh no, what it is, it's a log. It's a hollow log. You hit a hollow log with a smaller log. And that's
or
the
with
first
your
time.
hands. You sit astride the log, the first bongo. But we don't have those, but we do have, flutes, like mammoth bones with holes kind of painstakingly drilled into them that appear to be like 40,000 years old. We have prehistoric musical instruments.
You can imagine how that would come about, right? You're sitting around the campfire, you're chewing on a bone.
You're picking a mammoth bone.
You're sucking the marrow out, and then you blow, and it's like, woot, and everybody sits up straight. What was that? And yeah, the flautist, the first flautist.
It's fun. And everybody
got up, started prancing around.
And the cavemen are like, hey, look, Og the first flautist.
Og.
And they're like, yeah, we've been waiting for a flautist.
And then you had Jethro Tull almost immediately.
That happens still today with kids. A fun part of having kids is watching them discover music, just kind of blow across the lip of a empty salad dressing bottle and being like, ooh, or a Snapple bottle or whatever.
Yeah.
Or stretching rubber bands across a shoebox as we all did and learning that if you tighten it, the pitch goes up.
Do your kids whistle?
Boy, I sound like a terrible dad. My kids do not whistle as much as me. I think whistling is an old person's game.
I have always loved whistling.
I love whistling.
I'm trying to teach my daughter to whistle, and we've been working on it for a long time, and I have not found the right way to say, like, relax your mouth, tongue goes here, you blow. I mean, there's so many car drives that we go on where I'm like, and she's like,
some people can't whistle.
She's got to be able to whistle.
A friend of mine in high school couldn't whistle. She was the most musical person I've ever known. Perfect pitch. Tried for decades to whistle. To my knowledge, she still can't whistle.
I'm going to send her back. I'm going to send my daughter back to the daughter farm and get one that can whistle.
Do you think the breeder will?
Maybe.
Sorry,
take my money back.
We didn't know. It looked like she could. She had the rosy cheeks he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
She had the hair of golden straw.
I can't even curl my tongue. My tongue is too big to curl.
So you can't complain. Your tongue is a geographic tongue.
It is.
But it's too big. It's a continental tongue.
But it can freaking whistle.
The tongue is important to whistling.
Yes. When you're idly doing something, strolling around the house, are you whistling?
Absolutely.
Wow, we are such
old
humming. Dads. Oh, humming.
Do you like to hum?
I don't.
Love a good hum. I'm Winnie the freaking Pooh up in here.
I definitely will hum scat, but I don't just.
Do you actually scat? If you're like going for a walk, will you be like, full on Ella Fitzgerald? Boy, but you're an actual musician. Are you ever like just coming up with melodies and lyrics in your idle scatting?
Yes, but there's a difference between composing a song, which is what I would, if I came up with a melody and I liked it and I wanted it to repeat it, I would switch over into like song recording and remembering mode. But if I'm out for a walk, no, I am
the music of the spheres,
tunelessly
it's flowing through you,
like Scooby-Doo dap da da dap dap dapping. And I love to follow an aimless melody, an unchained melody, where I go from figure to figure. It goes from jazz to bebop to I was raised on big band. So
how old are you?
Well, because my dad was old and no one introduced me to popular music because I didn't really have like an older sibling in the house. So I thought Count Basie and Duke Ellington were contemporary music until some kid in 6th grade played me the White Album.
Until sometime last year.
And I was like, what is this incredible Satan music that you
what is Tommy Dorsey has really come a long way.
I think I heard Queen. Queen and Kiss were the two bands that kids played me that caused me to believe that maybe Count Basie wasn't the end of music. But
Kiss seemed very dangerous to me. That's very funny to kids of our generation, how our parents were very worried about Kiss.
Oh, yeah. Kids in Satan's Service.
Because they wore makeup. Knights, Night and Satan. We were the kids in Satan's Service.
They were knights.
They were knights.
But yeah, I'll scat along, but then when I get to a point where something on the long night walk gets dramatic, I'll always bounce down to all the horns coming in, like bum 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 ba da 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 da.
Are you wearing a white Cab Calloway suit when you walk around your neighborhood at night?
So yeah, but I love to have a meandering melody, and I wonder if that's a thing that's because I'm so influenced by jazz, or whether that's the wellspring of jazz.
Yeah. Because people naturally, a kid raised by coyotes will just start scatting in his head.
Yeah, just sort of following notes and not really trying to deliver anything.
I've seen coyote scat. No, that's hearing coyote scat.
Oh, you've seen it.
The reason I want to talk about actually kind of meandering, unchained through composed music in a bit. It'll come into Carlo's story. La storia di Carlo. But the reason why I wanted to ask about old music is because like there's kind of a funny thing where I think in the popular consciousness, the oldest musical geniuses we can think of, Beethoven and Mozart, it'll all be late classical or early romantic period. Yeah. Which means these people were living contemporaneously with the United States of America.
Right.
In many cases. Like they're not all that
1700s.
Old. Yeah, like early 1700s. I think Beethoven died in the 1720s or 30s. The 1820s or 30s. Yeah. Beethoven probably had thoughts about the War of 1812
I'm sure he did.
And the XYZ affair. Anaconda Plan. I don't know. I'm running out of AP US history
Amistad? Here. No, that was a little later.
But that's not true in other artistic genres. Like if you try to think of old literature, any layperson on the street will be able to name people hundreds of years older, Shakespeare or even Chaucer or Beowulf or Homer. You could go back thousands of years, as you mentioned, with literature. And the
Bible, right? That's the book that everybody that your layperson would say, what's the oldest book?
That's my favorite book.
The Bible. I know, it's your favorite book. You quote it all the time.
I'm like the president. I just love it all. I can't even think of a favorite verse.
Every time you show up over here, you're holding the Bible and you say, John, are you ready to hear the good news? I say, not today, Ken.
But one of these weeks, it's going to be the right time. Your heart will be touched. And it's true of the visual arts as well, and drama. If everybody were to name 5 or 10 old timey painters, they would all be from 300 years before Beethoven and Mozart and Brahms. There's something about music where, for some reason, it was a late bloomer.
Is it a notation problem? We just don't know how the music was played, and because it was never written down?
Yeah, it's got to be a post-Gutenberg thing where I mean, musical notation goes back to Sumerian clay tablets.
Okay.
People had their weird kind of drummers notes of how to do their favorite Sumerian battle chants, I guess. And but it didn't really become widespread in Europe until the monasteries, I think, until monks started keeping beautifully illuminated scrolls of their favorite Gregorian chants.
Well, you would think like a Greek. I mean, I've appeared in Greek plays. I was in the Oresteia. We could still produce.
Like recently, you do community theater here in South Seattle?
That's right, here at the South Seattle Community Theater Project.
Who were you in Oresteia?
I was Agamemnon in college. And so we're still producing Greek plays.
Not new ones.
Not new. Well, somebody in Greece is. Some young guy in a black turtleneck is writing a play right now. But
no, he's throwing stuff through windows.
But I think music, we think of it as a kind of, and within the recording industry, we kind of talk about this, the era, the 20th century being the era where music became a creative industry and musicians ascended to the loftiest ranks of artists and culture makers and like commentariat. And prior to the 19th century, musicians, classical and opera, those kinds of composers played like major roles in the culture. But prior to that, it was either religious music or like street fair kind of troubadour storyteller.
Balladeers and minstrels.
Yeah, and they were regarded as like low.
Yeah, that was like
class.
TV. Like some guy's going to come through and sing a saucy song about some girl on the moors.
So you would teach that to your apprentice, but it wasn't a thing where somebody in the village would say like, you got to give me the sheet music to that song about busty ladies.
Well, that was the thing. There was the composer was fairly invisible. You'd hear the musician, but all these songs are kind of anonymous. I think because in a time without really orchestras, there was no reason for a composer to think up an amazingly complicated piece and then teach it to 60 people.
Right.
Which was kind of the innovation of the classical period. Printing is a lot easier. Orchestras were being assembled. Opera has caught on in Italy, shortly after the Renaissance. And so that becomes opera. Opera was then a middlebrow affair.
Right. Well,
the poor people would love to go see the blood and thunder of opera because they didn't have wrestling, I guess.
Opera. I mean, if opera was translated into English, it would still be a middle to lowbrow affair if people really understood what they were saying, which is not very much. Operatic lyrics.
That's why even though no one wants subtitled movies, people will go see opera in Italian or German just because it sounds less ridiculous when you can't actually hear the kind of boring thing they're repeating over and over.
He is coming. He's coming.
Open the gates. He is coming. And repeat.
Now he's here. He's here. He's here.
Close the gates. Yeah.
And scene.
So the reason why... One interesting thing about doing a show about Carlo Gesualdo, who I'm sure will appear at some point in the entry.
I'd love to hear a show about Carlos Gesualdo.
Should we do one right now?
Sure.
You have accessed.
I was just sitting around.
We were just talking about Cab Calloway for no reason.
What is his era, Carlo?
Late Renaissance, born in the mid to late 16th century. Wrote most of his music in the very late 1500s, right around 1600. And so this is over 200 years before a lot of the composers, the old-timeiest composers you can think of.
And you would say this was before we would call it classical music.
Yeah, the classical, we just use classical to mean old, boring music with, I guess, strings,
right, powdered wigs.
Yeah, wigs and strings, harpsichords probably.
And
the kind of thing you hear in the background on museum audio guides.
Bustiers, though. There were a lot of bustiers.
Really? You think? Do you picture Bach in a bustier?
Not Bach himself, but if Amadeus is any guide, there was a lot of frolicking.
There was a lot of beauty spots and white powder.
Yes.
And paddling around in cleavage.
I'm a big fan of all of that.
Really?
I wish there was more of that today.
Even the powder?
Yeah, because the powder masks the smell of poo and pee, which is the unifying characteristic of old times.
And you're a recovering goth. You still like a pale Fraulein who looks like she's never seen the sun.
Any people of any race can still cover themselves in powder. It doesn't have to be white powder. Just covered in powder. That's how I like
Now,
people.
whiteface was wrong then, and it's wrong now, but we can't get rid of these representations. That would be like pretending they never existed.
That's right. We don't want to erase history.
We don't want to blackwash the history of whitefacing.
But beauty spots, how attractive are they? They're very attractive.
How come beauty spots haven't come back? I'm kind of surprised.
It'll come around. The kids today are still super duper normcore, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why young people want to be so unattractive.
We don't have that problem in my house. My daughter is very into black lipstick.
Oh,
which she will do on one lip, which is an innovation we didn't have.
That's a change since I saw her 2 weeks ago. Is this just a new innovation?
I think it depends on the mood.
Oh,
the previous day she might have had the black lipstick and some kind of attempt at temporary tribal tattoos on one cheek. Or
I could see my kid going through a Baroque phase, quite frankly. She's decided that she's going as they at her school they have a historical Halloween where you pick a historical figure, and she's going
a cool way to suck all the fun out of Halloween.
That's right,
I love
exactly.
It. Thomas
she's going
Paine.
as Mary Shelley.
Wow. Well, there you go. And I thought I had the only goth daughter.
And she's like, look, all of her outfits have these off-the-shoulder gowns. And I was like, yeah, she's got there's a lot of story going on.
She was hanging out in spooky castles with Byron.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Ada Lovelace.
My kids are not going to have a Baroque period, but I'm pretty sure they're going to have a Broke period.
Mm-hmm.
Wah, wah.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. So Carlo Gesualdo comes from the Renaissance, and he comes from really a time before music as we know it existed. But that doesn't mean that's just because we're dummies. There was plenty of music back then.
Right.
Monteverdi was just about to appear on the scene and kind of create the modern Italian opera, which is essentially the form that rich people in furs still go to see today with their little lorgnettes. But back then, there was no such thing. There was religious music, and Gesualdo did write 3 books of masses and requiems and whatnot, coming from the music that kind of arose in the monasteries and the abbeys, descended from the chants. But he also wrote the new secular form of the Renaissance. Humanism was on the grow, and everyone was really into madrigals. Do you ever sing madrigals on your late night walks?
I have a tendency to sing,
you probably need some friends to sing a madrigal. It's polyphonic.
I don't sing madrigals, but I do sing his head smashed in and his heart cut out and his liver removed and his bowels unplugged and brave Sir Robin. I don't.
That might be more a ballad.
A ballad.
Madrigals are kind of like lyric. They're pretty emo. Madrigals are lyric poetry set to music for multiple voices, sometimes as many as 8 voices. So it's really an awful kind of Ivy League a cappella thing.
Is it drony or is it? I mean, I can't get away from thinking that medieval music is all drony church music.
The thing about Gesualdo's madrigals, part of the reason why he's remembered today is because they are very surprising and feature unusual and sometimes even upsetting musical and emotional techniques.
Upsetting?
How you're going to have to explain this to me. I don't know why I'm explaining this to you. Songs written in a certain key will have certain harmonics and chord progressions you would expect.
Right.
Am I right?
If you are good at music,
if you're like a 80th percentile of music or better,
if you've learned music, it has it's made up of patterns, but also there are chords that follow chords. Chord progressions are ones that you can
You know, if you hear a G, you expect to hear in a certain key
in a context.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's some of the best musicians I know are the ones that can anticipate the next chord in a song they've never really heard before because they recognize the pattern, and so they know that.
And if you listen to a lot of music, you can kind of do it intuitively. You can kind of sense how this bit is going to resolve. A little bit of tension's been created. Oh, the bridge might be sound a little more like this.
And in talking to even like amateur but informed musicians, of which I am neither. I'm a professional and ill-informed musician.
Why are they even hanging out with you?
But they'll say like the next chord has to be a minor chord because it's in this progression and the minor chord is the next chord in the scale, basically.
And that's one thing that makes jazz often feel modern and surprising. Many different schools of jazz have these unusual chords and take them as a challenge, to build art out of a surprising turn.
It's one of the things that sets Seattle and the Northwest sets it apart from the pop music cultures of other cities in the United States, like in Nashville, in Austin, and in LA. The patterns are followed pretty carefully. What constitutes innovation in those songwriting circles is, they're lyrically inventive, but if you're writing country western music or kind of Americana, most brands of contemporary pop, you're sticking to the template.
That's part of the fun, that it reminds people of something older. So
right.
You can't really be like, and now an A minor.
Well, and also it's right.
Yeah.
And so
this stuff is not, we should say that, right? That this stuff is not just arbitrary. That a lot of these conventions are kind of innate to the way our brains process sound for some reason.
Yeah, it's any of the kind of the proportionateness in art. Leonardo's sketch of the perfect proportions, and the fact
there's
that
math.
Yeah, the fact that pop songs are 2.5 minutes long seems to indicate 2.5 to 3 minutes long seems to indicate something intrinsic about our attention span. But in Seattle, you'll find, at least songwriting wise, there's been a lot of reinventing of the wheel over the years. And when we succeed in the Northwest, we write pretty inventive pop songs that are somewhat unexpected chordally and structurally. But when we fail, we make unlistenable, meandering indie pop that just sounds like mashed potatoes. But
is this your take on grunge? That it's not really just a naive punk offshoot, that there's a lot, that it's more complicated, it's more complex?
The naivete in grunge often belies its sophistication. There are a lot of very unusual time signatures in grunge music that aren't evident to the lay listener, where it's just like, whoa, people are playing with the one a lot, and it is naive. A lot of it was. They weren't coming at it as scientists, but there was a desire to make something that you hadn't heard before, rather than emulate like an old form. They weren't just trying to read, and that's true of Led Zeppelin, right? That stuff was. There were often weird time signatures that that Seattle songwriters were responding to, for sure.
Gesualdo was mostly forgotten until the 20th century, when because his work was kind of ahead of his time. Its mood and its unusual harmonics kind of anticipate the Romantic era and any time of kind of resurgent, weird, discordant, emotional music. It was rediscovered in the 20th century by very modern thinkers.
Are you saying that he was grunge?
I don't know if he was grunge, but Aldous Huxley liked to listen to him on mescaline. Because he thought this was, he's listening to 400-year-old music and thinking this is the next thing. And in fact, Stravinsky, when he discovered Gesualdo's madrigals, kind of inspired his later kind of atonal stuff.
So
there's a weird thing with
Gesualdo was a 12-toner.
Well, there's a weird thing about the work back then, is that you don't know how it was sung. You don't know what kind of tempering was used in the voices that sung it. There's some evidence that Gesualdo was aware of a fellow Italian who had a musical system that divided the octave into 31 different tones rather than our 12, which means you get all these weird microtones and shading. And sometimes his work is Gesualdo's work is sung with these microtones, which makes it goes from kind of surprising and I can't put my finger on where or when this is from to really downright unearthly and unsettling when you hear it with these halftones that don't exist in our notation.
That's the thing that it's taken me that I always find surprising, which is that the way that we have broken up music, notated it, and conceive of it is very arbitrary. There are in between our notes,
it's a kludge.
Other notes.
It's what engineers would call a kludge.
Right.
Like the actual math didn't sound right, so we kind of had to split the difference on 10 different axes.
Yeah, there's an infinite number of in between notes, and when you temper a piano, in order to get it to sound right, you have to have the keys further out toward the edges be out of, technically out of tune.
That's because of the elephant's ghost.
It's the ghost of the elephant is like,
it's haunting your...
You will never get this piano in tune, no matter how hard you try. And even on the guitar, the B string, a lot of guitar players will slightly flatten their B string from...
I didn't know there was a guitar equivalent.
Yeah, from perfect tune. And in fact, there have been a few attempts to devise other tuning systems for guitars to make them, more in tune with themselves.
Something I've realized reading about rock is that a lot of the most distinctive guitar sounds you hear are because of, either a song or an artist who habitually played with a weird tuning, right?
Yeah, right. Also a grunge thing.
Do you want to listen to a little Gesualdo madrigal here? Get kind of the flavor, the unearthly flavor of it?
Yeah, I'm really curious about it now.
This is one of his better known works, Moro lasso al mio duolo.
So it's not atonal at all. But the chords
it's very
are
melodic.
The chords are coming.
But you never know what's going to happen next.
You don't, and some of those chords are really moving.
Yeah, so the goal of a madrigal, you were talking about unchained melodies. Madrigals are often through composed, which means there's never any repetition of any kind of chorus or motif. It's really just the composer trying to express the emotional content of each line of the poem with the appropriate melody.
I wish I was clever enough to do that, to really do it as a...
I don't know if that works in pop.
Composition. Yeah. Well, I mean, but the thing is, it could. You just have to be smarter than me. Apparently,
the translation of this is the speaker is talking about a terrible suffering he's in, and the woman who could cure it is actually making it worse.
I know that suffering.
Yeah, it's pretty standard emo stuff. It seems like there might be some playing on the idea that the death that she is helping him to experience is, not just the death he fears, but possibly also the little death of orgasmic pleasure.
Mort.
So it's an association of pleasure and pain and suffering, which is not unusual in his work or probably in his psyche. Because one of the reasons we remember Gesualdo, not just because of his avant-garde music theory, is because of his really lurid biography.
Right, that's very secular. Those are the secular themes for what you could...
To us, it sounds like a hymn because there's a bunch of people singing in what could be Italian or Latin to us.
Right.
But that would not have sounded like church music in 1600.
Interesting. Yeah, if you went to hear that in a cathedral in Prague, you would feel like, oh, I've had a real cultural exchange today.
No, this is Fall Out Boy.
Wow.
They would have heard a big difference between this and the the masses or whatever that he was doing on the side.
So he was a lurid Italian?
He was a very grand guignol kind of Italian. His biography is interesting. He came from a wealthy Neapolitan family.
That's why you can't tax the rich.
Because they won't write madrigals?
Because they won't write madrigals. Who would write them otherwise?
What I love about Warren Buffett is the madrigals. Thank you, Warren. They're the Nebraska's finest madrigals.
We're going to hear them all after he dies.
He came from a family with a lot of wealth and privilege. His father had married some kind of cousin or relative of the Pope, of the famous Borromeo family that had produced a Pope Pius and a famous cardinal who later became St. Charles Borromeo.
These were the popes that had like 5 wives.
Oh, yeah.
These are the bad popes. The era of bad popes.
You think it's bad to have 5 wives and 10 houseboys?
Hey, listen, I don't want to get into that with you. The houseboys, no, I think every rich guy should have 5 houseboys.
That's why we can't tax the rich. They won't be injecting money into Thailand anymore. And he was, but he was never going to, Carlo in particular was never going places because he was the second born son.
Oh, sure.
His older brother was going to inherit, so he was destined for the clergy.
Right, of course.
He wasn't that into it. What he really loved was music. From a very young age, he was just one of these kids, and I wish I had one. You just couldn't get to put down the lute or the harpsichord or he didn't pick up the harpsichord, but the guitar. Like, he played basically all 3 instruments that would have existed at the time. He just had a knack. He later, spoilers, his brother later dies and he doesn't inherit his father's title. He becomes
that's every rich father's nightmare is that you're
the wastrel second son.
Yeah, you're a wastrel second son who's out playing the lute in the garden suddenly becomes heir to the throne. It's the problem with contemporary Syria.
He may have poured poison into his brother's ear. I have no idea. But he inherits in his 20s. He inherits his father's title and becomes Prince of Venosa, which is the family seat, a castle, I think maybe 60 miles east of Naples. But he's best known for the events of the night of October 16th, 1590.
Oh, he had one night. He had one great night that we know about him even now.
Yes,
as a result.
this is in the public record because it's in the court and police record. This has gone from a madrigal podcast to a true crime podcast.
Go on.
One of the amazing hairpin turns that makes omnibus so popular in the 30th century.
Is this some kind of Satan worshiping thing? Because I am here for it.
Satan worshiping is coming. On the night of October 16th, 1590, a delegation of Naples officials are called to an apartment in the royal palace in Piazza San Domenico Maggiore because there has been a double murder. They walk in to find a couple has been caught in flagrante. Delicto, no less.
Delicto.
I don't even know what that means. Flagrante must mean flagrant. Delight?
In fragrant delight.
Not fragrant. Did you say fragrant?
In fragrant delight.
It might have been fragrant as well. The Neapolitan officials did not note that on the clipboard. But a jealous husband has caught his beautiful wife, Dona Maria d'Avalos, who's a famous beauty of Naples at the time, with one of the most beautiful young men, the Duke of Andria, Don Fabrizio Carafa.
They have names that suggest that they're beautiful and sensual people.
Right. Can you imagine if your name is Don Fabrizio Carafa and you're just some ugly old Fellini guy with a big mole?
That could also work, though. Don Fabrizio.
It's true. These Italian names, they have to be one or the other, right?
You're either young and beautiful or you're old and wicked.
You can't just be a normal guy with a briefcase.
Hey, I'm Don Fanucci.
I just want to go over the latest accounts.
Yeah.
In this case, he's young and beautiful. He's, he's a heartthrob.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of who the equivalent is. Who's a heartthrob today?
Oh, Harry Styles.
Harry Styles.
No, it's one of those guys. It's one of those K-pop guys. The only cute guys anymore are those K-pop guys.
This is the problem I was having. I was trying to name a heartthrob, and I was I stopped at Brad Pitt, who is probably in his late 50s.
He's at least 60 years old now. No, the heartthrobs, the ones that we don't understand.
I finally thought of one, and I was like, Zac Efron. No, wait, that is also even my hip reference is a decade old.
15 years old.
Exactly,
15 years ago. I have no idea who is popular. They're TikTok artists.
They're YouTubers. They're terrible YouTubers who are all secretly white supremacists.
And they're all you do is tune in to watch them play video games.
All the good heartthrobs are gay.
I have no idea who the heartthrobs are. I kind of want to know, but I kind of don't.
I don't even know how to Google it. I'm now a 70-year-old man.
Well,
Google who are the
That's the
heartthrobs.
problem. If you Google it, like, who are the hot young people?
Then suddenly the FBI is.
Yeah, you're going to get flagged.
Well, whoever, it doesn't matter because we're speaking to the 40th century and they have their own
Sure.
sexy,
They have their own-
pouting octopus
Right.
insect.
Their own hot clouds of lint.
So just imagine your hot cloud of lint has been caught naked with his lover. The police report gets scandalous very quickly. The Duke is wearing only a woman's nightdress.
The Duke is.
Yes, with ruffs of black silk as fringes.
This is the beautiful Duke who has now died.
Yes, he has died as he lived, wearing women's underwear.
Okay.
He is covered in blood and he's got wounds all over. He's got a gunshot wound through his elbow into his breast, kind of Governor Connolly style. With his close
and then out the back of his neck and into the side of JFK's
turns
head.
in midair, mind you. His sleeve has been scorched. He's got another gunshot wound to the head.
2 guns.
Oh, right, because you didn't have a repeater back then.
No, either 2 guns or the murderer took time to reload, which seems like would have been a while, right?
I
a few
like
minutes.
I like how you're going all diagnosis murder on this 430-year-old crime. But he's also got wounds to his head, face, neck, chest, stomach, kidneys, arms, hands, and shoulders, and these are holes.
My goodness.
And the holes go all the way through him to the floor. So somebody
sword
not only has
wounds.
two guns, but also a sword. So maybe it is an octopus.
Or 2 people, or 4 people.
And he's not alone. You can't be in flagrante. Oh, can you be in flagrante delicto alone?
Unless you're Michael Hutchins.
I have teenage boys. He is not alone. His Doña Maria Davalos, Carlo Gesualdo's wife, is lying on the bed. Her throat is cut through,
Oh, no.
drenching her nightshirt in blood. I wonder if she's wearing his underwear. She's also got wounds on her face, her right arm, her right hand, and her torso.
Trigger alert.
Yeah, I guess I should have said. Late Renaissance violence coming
Let's
up.
put a note on the front of the show.
And there's this is not going to be a mystery for very long. So if you like that kind of true crime podcast, we have a suspect.
Oh, who is it?
Carlo Gesualdo, now 24, had been seen entering the apartment with 3 men. Oh, he's got henchmen. He's not an octopus. Everybody's got a gun and a sword, probably.
Sure.
Shouting, "Kill that scoundrel along with this harlot. Shall a Gesualdo be made a cuckold?" So you got motive, means, and opportunity.
But wait, he's like shouting this on the doorstep where people are recording it. It sounds like he had a scribe with him too.
The servants apparently are listening. I can report later. After a time, now you could still say, maybe, who knows? That's all very circumstantial, right?
Sure. No one actually saw him do it.
He's got to be innocente until proved culposo.
Culpable.
After a short time, he reemerged, his hands dripping with blood.
Okay.
Well,
Still
it's not
circumstantial.
looking great. Then he went back into the room saying, "I do not believe they are dead," and did more violence.
Okay, right.
Then he leaves town. He gets on a horse and rides 60 miles east to Castle Gesualdo, his family seat, where he bricks himself in and orders all the trees on the hillside cut down so he can see the approach of any angry family members or delegation from the Duke of Naples.
Does he have the cask of the Amontillado in there with him?
He's ready to go. He's not really a brick up your enemies kind of guy. He's more like charge in with, get drunk, charge in with 2 buddies.
Right.
And riddle them with sword wounds, kind of a husband.
Okay. Well, I mean, different strokes.
As you can imagine, maybe you can imagine, like today, of course, this would be the trial of the century. Him fleeing east in a white Bronco.
Right.
Driven by Alfonso Cowlingo. This would be news for years.
Well, I have to imagine it was then too. There's not a time when a rich guy can kill his beautiful wife and her beautiful lover and not have it splashed on the front page.
Are you saying Ronald Goldman was beautiful?
Ron Goldman?
He's a good-looking guy.
He's handsome at least.
He's not an Adonis like the Duke of Andria, probably.
Well, no, but I don't think Ron Goldman was her lover. Maybe.
Wait,
he was just there to give her car keys back.
Holy cow! I didn't know we were going to have such a hot OJ takes in the year of our Lord 2020. The law does come for Carlo Gesualdo, and he has to stand trial. As I was saying, this was the trial of the century. Like Naples loves this.
Absolutely.
And the rumors just get out of control. In the stories, Gesualdo mutilates the genitalia of the dead couple, leaves their bodies to rot on the steps of the palazzo, arranges for some demented monk to violate the corpse of his wife. Trigger warning.
Oh, dear.
It's not much of a trigger warning if I say it after.
Right.
Okay, another trigger warning coming up.
Unless futurelings have like...
Are you four-dimensional beings?
Yeah, they realize that time is a flat circle and they're listening to this episode all at once.
That would be very helpful because then at the end of the show, we could be like, this episode had a ton of historical racism, violence, misogyny. The fourth rumor, which I don't even know how to parse this, trigger warning, is that the two lovers had an illegitimate child. Gesualdo was so angry that he murdered the child as well by suspending it in some kind of swinging cradle or bassinet and just swinging it until it died. Like Roger Moore on the Centrifusion Moonraker, I guess.
Can you die from swinging?
I guess just the G-forces.
Wow.
In this version.
Swing it until the child dies. All
well,
right.
people back then have a weird idea, like, oh, of course he died. He felt sad on a cold day.
Yeah, right. You can kill somebody by staring at them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
In Italy, they just think,
right.
Somebody looks at you wrong on the subway.
Oh, he cursed on my tomato.
So, yeah, that famous Italian proverb. That famous racist Italian proverb.
He cursed on my potato and now I'm dead.
Trigger warning, jokes about, not even jokes.
Nope, just bad
weird Italian accents.
Impressions of Italians.
So in the middle of all these swirling, lurid rumors, Gesualdo stands trial and is acquitted.
Is it because he's a famous composer?
No, he is actually not yet a famous composer. He's merely a music lover at this point.
Oh, all of this reinvention of music came after this terrible crime?
That's what's interesting when you listen to the emotional heft and Sturm and Drang of these madrigals. Is this is from a man who killed his wife in bloody fashion. Wow. The reason why he's acquitted is because omicidio d'onore is a pretty absolute defense at the time. A husband is allowed to do whatever he wants in the case of
his honor.
Yes. And of course, women are not accorded the same right. by Renaissance law.
There's some different version of it, sure.
Probably a little less expensive. But in fact, there's some scholarly writing at the time that holds that husbands would have felt obligated.
Yeah.
That even a husband that didn't want to go this guy got two friends and put 30 holes in them.
Right.
So maybe he's not one of the reluctant omicidio d'onore killers. But even at the time, you might have felt obligated like a Englishman fighting a duel during the Regency period.
And there are still places in the world today where that kind of honor killing is part of the culture. Is that part of the expectation?
Sadly, yes. Yeah, there are parts of the Muslim world, right, where that would follow infidelity or. So he's found not guilty, and within 3 years he is married again.
Oh, she's brave.
Yeah. I mean, if there's anybody whose rebound wife you don't want to be. Has OJ remarried?
I don't know. But there's all these stories of people that are like carrying on prison correspondences with murderers and marrying them. I mean,
I'm the one who can understand him. And
Ted Bundy had a woman, Ted Bundy got married during the later stages of his last trial. I think that they tried to get a conjugal visit so that she could have his baby. Maybe that didn't actually happen.
Did you just dream that? Because I don't dream about Ted Bundy's conjugal visits.
I mean, being a Northwesterner, if you haven't read everything on Bundy a few times, Bundy conjugal.
See, this is something else you don't want to Google.
Bundy conjugal prison marriage. Ted Bundy and ex-wife Carol Ann Boone.
Oh, it didn't last. That's a surprise to me.
Do you know Ann Rule?
Not personally.
Rosa Bundy. His daughter Rosa was conceived in prison. And she is alive to this day. She was born in 1982. So if you're prepared to have a child with Bundy while he's in prison, pre-execution.
I wouldn't have a child with Al Bundy.
Really? It would be Christina Applegate.
No, it might be what's his name, Faustino.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to generalize too much about the appeal of a certain kind of bad boy to women, but let's just say there are lots of broken people.
What you gonna do?
And there must be some appeal to. Sure, he's got a dark side, and I kind of like that, but I think I'm the one who can understand him.
Also, in this case, he is a super rich prince.
Oh, I thought you were still talking about Ted Bundy. Yes. So in the late 1500s, the fact that his father has now died. He has inherited the princedom of Venosa, and he is now one of the richest men in the kingdom of Naples. And in fact, Eleanor d'Este is a very advantageous match. She is a cousin of the Ferrara family, who are the wealthy and cultured nabobs of southern Italy at the time.
I knew a guy named Toby Ferrara.
And was he in fact a great patron of the arts?
No, he had a white Chevy stepside pickup. It was on big tires. It was pretty in Anchorage in 1984. It was pretty cool.
That's a good story.
Yeah, thanks.
So Carlo Gesualdo is very much he's a very much Robert Browning's My Last Duchess kind of a scheming nobleman, picking off young women one by one. But the fact that he now has entree into the court of the Ferraras is huge.
Right.
Because this is like the HQ of mannerism. So the High Renaissance is now kind of petered out just because it's been a victim of its own perfection. You know, you were talking about the mathematical perfection of a Leonardo drawing or a Michelangelo fresco. The sculpture with the anatomy got perfect. The perspective got perfect. Everything's got this cool marble, glossy perfection.
Where do we go from here?
It's stultifying to an art form.
Right.
Because exactly, where do you go from here?
You figured it out.
And typically when art becomes very glossy and produced like that, the next step is in the other direction.
Did they pee on the American flag? Is that what they did next?
They recorded the first Sex Pistols record. No, in this case, it's less punk rock and more a move toward glam rock.
Ken, we've come up with some exciting T-shirt designs in the last couple of months. What can you tell us about T-shirts going forward?
I like the December ones. After years of requests, we have finally decided there should be an omnibus shirt with a mail truck on it.
Yay, mail truck shirt.
And it's fun. It's got Mr. Zip driving the truck, that kind of nightmare-inducing representative of the post office's zone improvement plan. And he's having a fun time driving his mail truck on its last legs. And it says omnibus. And then there's a different shirt about...
He's kind of ghost riding, isn't he? He's a little bit out of the truck. Like he's only got one arm and one leg.
And he's leaning out the right side, but that is correct.
Yeah,
that's the right side. His hood is up. It's smoking. He's quite a rakish young man. He's a real daredevil here.
Yeah. Huh.
And then this is the de Havilland Beaver, right? You talk about the aviation one because I can't remember what this is.
It is. It's the de Havilland Beaver from the front end.
It's landing on a Alaskan lake with its sea pods, with its pontoons, or sea pods as we call it.
That's right. It's a float plane, as we say in the parlance. It shows its very distinctive and characteristic radial engine from the front. So there's no mistaking the profile of the de Havilland Beaver.
These are some good-looking shirts about some popular omnibus entries. 2 new designs every month, so these will be gone at the end of December. Don't miss out.
That's right. This ad has a time limit. You've got over 2 weeks, so almost 3 weeks.
Go to omnibusproject.com/store. You'll always see the links to our 2 new shirts that our friend Dave has up for us at Mediocrity. You'll also find a link to our TeePublic store where we have a wide array of stuff with the Omnibus logo on it. Hoodies, what else? Hats, I think. Mugs.
Onesies?
Phone cases. Yeah, onesies, but only in adult sizes.
Ha 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 ha. Rawr. If you show up at my house in an omnibus adult onesie,
yes, John?
You can spend the night.
How does that sentence end?
Maybe in my guest room, but definitely you can spend the night.
So don't forget, if you're interested in omnibus gear for a limited time only, head to omnibusproject.com/store.
That's omnibusproject.com/store.
The glam rock of the Renaissance is mannerism.
Oh.
Which is, it keeps all the technical virtuosity. All these guys had learned to paint from these Renaissance masters.
That's what you have to do. You learn to paint and then you forget how to paint, Ken.
Instead of the cool and calm and collected and polished Renaissance work, however, the Mannerists went in for drama, dramatic light and shadow, lurid color. I'm talking about the visual arts, but this was true in music.
So like
and
El Greco?
Yeah,
what?
Exactly. Imagine a lot of distortion and hyperbole, and imagine the exaggeratedly long necks of a Parmigianino woman, or like you say, the turbulent sky over Toledo in an El Greco painting. Just really bright colors, strong emotions. Really all the sex and death and pain we heard in that Gesualdo madrigal, even though today it sounds a little antiseptic to us. Right. That was all coming out of mannerism, and the Ferraris court was just ground zero for this new movement. He had all the great poets were there. Ariosto and Torquato Tasso are there.
And this is circa...
This is still the very end of the 16th century, 1590 something. And this becomes the most productive period in Gesualdo's life while he's surrounded by all these other, people are he's already rich.
Right.
He's got these super rich and influential patrons granting him legitimacy despite his bloody double murder.
Sure, must be nice.
Yeah, nice work if you can get it.
And I wonder if in that situation his bloody dramatic murder didn't increase his cachet. I mean, it's so hard to tell what it was like, but you can imagine.
You can imagine what
now.
It would be like today.
Yeah, somebody that had some terrible crime in their past, but that they were vindicated and were kind of celebrated for it.
And also, just the fact that the details of the crime were so full of passion. Two beautiful people slain at the moment of ecstasy with bloody wounds and all the the anger and the furor that must have driven that. I mean, that could be a plus for an artist. And I think this drove a lot of the 20th century reappraisal or rediscovery of Gesualdo. The fact that he had a true crime biography wouldn't have done it. And the fact that he wrote very inventive madrigals wouldn't have done it. But the fact that he had both, that's just irresistible. Like it would be today for a musician whose offstage life is just as scandalous and crazy as the music is.
I don't think of Schoenberg as somebody who's like, I'm listening to this serial killer music though. I mean, the music definitely is its own.
You have to have you'd have to have a kind of a refined ear to hear what Huxley and Stravinsky heard.
If I were really rich and had gotten away with murder, I think my music would be given a fairer appraisal by the world.
What if you had more of a scandalous, I don't know, what's an example in the rock world of somebody who's, just the tales that are told about Led Zeppelin in hotel rooms, I guess,
right.
That kind of stuff really burnishes a legend.
All that Satan stuff,
if somebody,
King on the Alamo.
But if somebody actually does something really problematic, I mean, today, Jim Morrison flashing a crowd, unleashing his little lizard wouldn't.
Right. I mean, R. Kelly should be in prison.
Exactly.
But he somehow still walks the land.
And do you think in a case like that, even though everyone kind of unanimously agrees that that's awful behavior, do you think that is kind of what powers the legend and the sales to some degree?
Well, I mean, R. Kelly continues to have like legions of female fans that defend him and like will take no evidence that would call their leader into question.
So are they ignoring it, or are they kind of secretly a little bit
I think probably
delighted by
it, right? That he's
that's the lesson of Gesualdo.
I don't know the appeal of a bad boy. I know the appeal of bad girls though.
See? You can turn it around in your head. You can see how this works, John. This is empathy. So Gesualdo's late life was no less lurid possibly because of the monsters in his past, mm-hmm. or possibly because of the monsters in his head that led to the legal troubles of his past. Mm-hmm. His later life was no better. His second marriage was no happier.
Did he murder her?
He did not. He was
right.
serially unfaithful and probably abusive to her. But his household was still always in the Neapolitan gossip circles. In 1603, for example, 2 household servants were tried for sorcery and were tortured into confessing the Satanist shenanigans that were going on in the Gesualdo. Now, this is
a Satanism.
This is a torture extracted confession, so I can't speak to this as if I were there. We'd have to ask Satan. But in their accounts, and I'm trying to think what's the nicest way to say this for the future, one of the witches testified that she had given the prince potions that contained among the ingredients her own menstrual blood.
Right.
I like how you say right. Yeah.
Typical witchy stuff.
Check. Got it.
Yeah.
And that that he would have sexual relations with the servants. And then afterwards, she would insert a piece of bread into her nether regions.
Nether bread.
And they would enjoy it together in a sauce. I don't know why the sauce is relevant here. A nice marinara. The trial record actually contains the phrase, describes the bread as, quote, soaked with the seed of them both.
Ooh.
So, and then after the trial, these women are imprisoned. And because he's the Prince of Visano, they're imprisoned in his castle. He's now got his former witchy sex slaves in his dungeon.
Well done, sir.
Hissing and rattling chains.
Sure, I bet they were hissing and rattling chains.
Despite all this...
well, there's nothing keeping him from letting them out to make their saucy bread.
I guess. He's the Prince of Visano.
Right.
Venosa. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying Visano. He appears as unhappy or tortured as before. He has inner demons that give him no peace. For days on end, he will go into terrors and funks, which appear to be only cured if he can have 10 or 12 young men whom he kept specially for the purpose to beat him violently 3 times a day, during which operation he was wont to smile joyfully.
Now, I don't want to kink shame.
I don't want to kink shame.
But it seems like he's got some proclivities.
He's got some issues.
Yeah,
which if you're an extremely rich Neapolitan duke, I guess you can indulge, but probably at the cost of many of those around you. I mean, these guys who had to just bend him over a stool and hit him, these were just strapping young men from the village who I'm sure get a nice paycheck for it. But it can't have been fun to be his second wife or any of the household servants.
Yeah, who knows? Imagine. I mean, it depends. Did his second wife have to sit there tied to a chair and watch, or was his second wife off having an affair with the gardener?
Sure, maybe she gets a beautiful Duke of Andria as her own.
If they have a big enough house.
Well, it is a castle, so she probably gets some room. So even though the funny thing is, at the time, despite his 20th century appeal to the avant-garde, he was actually thought of as a very conservative voice because he never followed Monteverdi and went into opera.
Oh.
He kept working in the old forms. The masses
opera
and the
was the new rock and roll.
That's the hot new thing.
Oh.
Yeah, if you were, it was hip hop basically,
right.
And he was stodgy and kept playing
blues,
R&B. Yeah, exactly. But he really does seem to be the prototype for, as we were saying, this idea that artists are tortured, and it's not just that great art comes out of that, but a great popular hypnosis can be exerted over your following when they. The kind of criminology that can go into your lyrics when they feel like they know you and your demons personally. It's a myth we don't think of, certainly not 200-300 years before Beethoven, but it really powers a lot of music today.
Yeah, it powers a lot of fan culture, but listening to this music, if I didn't know any of this story, it would still be compelling. And I guess it's the question, how do you separate the artist from the art? Can you appreciate music and painting, but also even comedy made by someone that you find personally reprehensible? A
confessional form like comedy, and maybe even a lyric poem like a madrigal that's supposed to be from the heart. Like, these are much harder cases to separate the art from the artist, because you have the illusion. It's all premised on the illusion, which is almost certainly has a ton of truth in it, that this is not a construct, that you are actually seeing the real attitudes and emotions, and often very closely related to the ones that got the artist in trouble. I mean, we know how many of Woody Allen's movies and routines are about, slavering over underage girls, for example.
Marrying your stepdaughter. But can you watch a Roman Polanski movie and enjoy it?
It gets hard. I have the hardest time when it overlaps with the real life stuff. The the cruelty to women in a movie like Repulsion or Rosemary's Baby, for example. That's a lot harder for me than Chinatown. And I guess what that says about me is it would be nice if I could ignore it, you know?
How about a Bill Cosby album? Could you listen to a Bill Cosby album?
That's an interesting case because even though he's a comedian, that's nothing in there is confessional about what we now know to be his real dark side.
Right. He's talking about a trip to the dentist.
And charming stories about his Philadelphia childhood, you know, in theory, much easier to separate. But then at a certain point, you stop thinking of him as the comedian who had the scandal. You start to think of him as the awful man who used to do comedy. And then you can't even hear the voice anymore.
Right. It's the voice is so signature. But I mean, is Fat Albert canceled?
It's sad. Fat Albert was like the only, it was like the only well-written kind of woke cartoon of our childhoods that would have episodes about bullying and street crime. And I mean, Fat Albert was real.
So I don't know. Gesualdo, like I'm into his tunes.
We might have to apologize to the future for playing that little snatch of a Gesualdo madrigal because
we didn't know what it was saying. It might be like, kill the wabbit, kill the wifey.
If he has been cancellado, we apologize. How do you say I'm sorry in Italian?
Scusa.
Yeah. Mi dispiace.
Hey. Scusa. Huh?
Scusi.
Scusi. Scuccio. Escucho.
There we go.
Escucho is a Portuguese coin, right?
That's our last word on the subject.
Escudo.
If these spirits have offended, escucho.
Escudo.
Escudo.
And that concludes Carlo Gesualdo. Entry 526.HE1304. Certificate number 39859 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that social media still exists in your era, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are archived at Omnibus Project. You can follow at Ken Jennings and at John Roddick for your latest celebrity news and political commentary. I'm also on Instagram showing photos of the muddy ditch in my backyard.
It's a ravine.
And probably by the time this episode airs, I'll be actually living in my house, so there'll be a lot more selfies of me showing off my old tweed jackets.
You're finally going to get them out of their storage locker?
They've all been in storage for a year, and I'm going to get those tweed jackets out.
Moths are going to fly out of the pockets.
They are. It's going to be so terrible. I have to burn them all in a fire. You can email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com, and please do. We love getting your emails. We suggest that you go search out one of our fan communities on Facebook and Reddit and Discord and all the other places where fans congregate. Omnibus fans tend to be a cut above, a different caliber of smart and funny, and on our fan sites tend to be very lighthearted.
Who knows why they're on Facebook, but they're really making the best of it.
There they are. There are a lot of scientists among them and people that work in analytical fields.
It's probably keeping them away from curing coronavirus or something.
It tends to not be too political there, although not apolitical, but not too political. Everybody keeps on a pretty even keel.
Nice job.
I can't say for sure what's going on over on Discord. It might be pure anarchy over there, but
it's in the name, Discord.
You can mail us actual things. We've gotten some wonderful, wonderful things from our listeners over the years. All kinds of books and papers and pins and thermoses and
I'm looking
artwork.
at the mail right now. We just got from Brett, whom we met at that town hall event at the beginning of the year, pre-COVID. He, I guess, when he spoke to us there, he mentioned Virgil's eclogues.
Oh yeah, sure.
I
remember that conversation.
Which were the subject of one of the final Jeopardies on my last Goat game, and he thought that was appropriate because there's a lot of apparently literal goat loving
in Virgil.
In Virgil. And so he wanted me to enjoy all the romantic poems written to goats here in Virgil's eclogues.
Was that the last event that we did in Seattle before we left town? Was it the last?
Yeah, it was like
pre-COVID.
It was like a week and a half before Seattle shut down.
Wow!
So that was the last. That was like the last waltz for
nice.
Not just for Omnibus, but for Western civilization.
Well, thanks for sending the book.
He also says, he notes that the eclogues were only preserved accidentally because the Christians misinterpreted a certain line as being about Christ when it's probably actually about
having sex with a goat.
Caesar Augustus. So yeah, close.
Sure.
P.S. Tell John I'm on your side on REM's Out of Time and will happily come to fisticuffs. He's going to fight you to defend late period Warner Brothers period REM
No,
records.
he said that he was on my side. Please tell John that he was on.
I think he says I'm on your side.
Oh, he's on your side
your Ken's side.
Agreeing that Out of Time is a good album that belongs in the canon.
I think it's as strong as any REM record. And you and well, we don't know. I think Brett agrees. I'm going to say Brett agrees with me.
That album sold a lot of copies, so
that doesn't disqualify it.
No.
Having a really good single shouldn't be a mark against it.
I mean, it's definitely like their most popular record, I think.
We also got I bet Automatic sold more. And the funny thing is Monster might have sold more, but then everyone immediately returned it to a used CD store. You can always find 10 copies of Monster in every used record store.
It says 4.5 million copies. It's got Losing My Religion, which is something I'm sure that gets played at weddings all the time.
I mean, it's got Shiny Happy People, which I understand. We also got a postcard from LTLFTC Todd. What does LTLFTC mean? Love the Louvre. No, I don't know what
LTLFTC.
Is this Christian? Is this
some
Christian
long-time
thing?
Listener, first-time caller.
You figured it out. Did you have to Google it, or did you just do it in your head?
No, I was just putting it together.
Thanks, Todd. It's an Iditarod postcard because he is stopping in Wasilla during an Alaskan vacation. Do you think this is Todd Palin?
Could be. I mean, that's where
thanks for listening,
he's from,
Todd.
Wasilla.
Thanks for sending us a postcard from your hometown. We also got a letter I am not going to quote, but it's really the first hate mail we've actually gotten to the P.O. box.
You're talking about not an email, but a letter. Someone took the time to write a letter.
And it's from here in Seattle, and it's anonymous, but in a very profane fashion. He really threatens to stop listening if we don't just stick to the topic and stop getting involved in current events.
Oh, he doesn't like the politics.
He prefers a less interesting version of the show where nothing from history or culture are connected to the modern crises and problems. And he insists that this would be true whether we were on his side of the aisle or not.
Of course.
Which I believe 100%.
Of course, absolutely.
We all get very angry when people connect history and culture to what we think are the problems of modernity.
Right.
And equally angry if they apply them to other ideas of the problems of modernity.
Now, wait. This person lives in Seattle?
Yes.
And wrote this letter to us complaining that we are presumably injecting liberalism.
If we say one more thing about Trump, he's going to stop listening. And I, you know what? I don't want to lose this guy.
Why?
He seems so cool.
Why is he living in Seattle? You and I are like virtual Republicans by Seattle standards.
That's right. We're going to get strung up by Black Bloc at some point if we don't move to Burien.
We're the picture of restraint.
I'm not overly troubled. We have plenty of conservative listeners who are like, yeah, I get it. These wacky lefties and/or, yeah, I get it. My side lost the culture war 50 years ago, and all the art I enjoy comes from leftists. But I'll try not to think about it.
We have never recorded a single episode where we didn't inject some bit of our left-leaning beliefs and ideas.
How could we not? How can you do a confessional art form like a podcast without actually reflecting your thoughts and ethic? I mean, you can't.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, even in the defenestration episode, I'm sure I came out against defenestration.
I think you were pro defenestration.
Oh, maybe that's
of
true.
Republicans.
Which one is the more left way?
That show's got a 45-minute digression on throwing Todd Palin out a window of the Wasilla Best Western.
Well, to all of our conservative listeners,
thank you for your patience.
That's right. Please contribute to our Patreon. Which
you didn't read the address, by the way. Send all your screeds to.
Send your typewritten angry letters
and your classical goat sex poetry
and all of your grandfather's thermoses to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155. And if you are really mad at us about the politics, you can show your frustration by contributing to our show at patreon.com/omnibus project.
I'm not sure I follow.
Your hate dollars are registered in the Patreon app.
We can tell
as hate dollars.
We can tell how much of the dollars we get are hate dollars.
That's right.
And it shames us to receive and spend them.
Every time you donate $15.50.
Oh, yeah, we should give a number.
That sends a clear message to us that you are displeased with us and the way that we're producing the show.
Send some conservative number. I don't watch white supremacist YouTubers, but you decide what the bad right-wing number is and send us that amount in dollars, and we will be that'll teach us.
Well, there is a lot of numerology on the right.
Yes, I actually do know what the bad number is.
You know some bad numbers.
I just don't want to say the bad
number.
number.
There are quite a few, actually. So put that number of dollars into our account.
No, we would return that bad number.
What?
I don't want to get the tainted Nazi money.
The thing is, it's not going to.
I guess he's not spending it on ammo.
That's right. They're sending it to us, and we're absorbing the hate and turning it back into love.
And we're giving it to.
Our hate is just getting buried in our omnibus garden.
We're just all going to give it to nonprofits you hate, probably.
What we do is we grow potatoes in the hate garden, and then we use those potatoes in our potato cannons, and we fire the hate potatoes back at our enemies.
You think of potatoes as a weapon because you are prejudiced against potatoes. I think of potatoes as a delicious side dish. By the way, one of the benefits of Patreon, in all seriousness, Patreon support is what's keeping the show going now in a very hard time for podcasting. So we appreciate your support. We try to show that appreciation by making it well worth your while to make any size donation, even large or small. Even the lowest tier gets you a bonus omnibus entry every month.
Mm-hmm. And a good one.
And at one of the higher tiers, you get to suggest a show topic. And in fact, that's what happened today. Carlo Gesualdo was suggested by a $50 donor,
really?
Joe Brent.
It's such a Ken topic. Joe Brent really, really understood you.
I really wanted more. He requested a famous British electronic music engineer and composer, and we had just done Joe Meek.
Right.
So we had to go back and say, we would love to do this show about the woman who did the Doctor Who theme, but what else you got?
Right.
So we are curating the listener suggestions to make sure Omnibus is still the comprehensive reference work we always intended. But it's fun. If you have a topic you've always wanted to hear on the show, you can hear it by supporting the show on Patreon. Listeners, from our vantage point here in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. If the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.